So the reason that they can do this is partly because of how the internet was created. It started here in the US military, but also the US academia is where it started. So this shows you where all these submarine cables are going. You can see here, this is how the information flows. So even if you're in China and you call someone in Latin America, very often, simply because of the way that the communication cables run, it will go through the US. Once your communication does that, it is subject to US law. And any company operating in any of these other countries that's a US company is similarly subject to these national security letters, and they have to hand it over, and they do. Here's the submarine cables, and here is a particular submarine that's main role, it's called the Jimmy Carter, and its main role is to cut and tap into fibre. This one is to cut and to tap into fibre. Fibre optic cables. Yeah, so these are the fibre optic cables. These are they. You can see it's a little bit of a similar image to that, but that's including data centres. So that's the undersea world of the internet. And here we have a NASA official saying, to be blunt, the Western world, especially the US, has gained influence and made a lot of money by drafting the standards that the web was created out of and shaping today's internet. And that means that we've been able to export a lot of American culture and technology, and we've made a lot of money. So they're kind of pretty open about it. This statement was made in one of the things that Snowden revealed. The first thing that Snowden revealed was about the PRISM, wasn't it? The way that these fat bags, companies, are providing information. It's because much of the world's communications flow through the US, we can do this. It's the cheapest path to tap into these companies because they have so much of the information. So the FBI and the NSA are able to gather all of the information here. If you look at Gmail, Hotmail and Yahoo, that's exactly 1/2 of everybody who has an email account. So that's the problem of monopolising and concentrating and into one place a lot of data, because it means that literally half of the data is available to them very, very, very simply. And you can see that the PRISM folks decided that they would both tap the fibre and go through the companies. You should do both. So they're rubbing it everywhere they can. And this shows the dates that all of these companies came on board. You should see, I mean, the statements of these companies made after Snowden revealed the PRISM documents were quite interesting. They just all said, no, we're not. How do you explain the dates? They calibrated a very slick set of talking points, and they've just repeated. And now, Congress is almost legislating it and justifying it. So, I talked a little bit about the cultural hegemony that we're seeing on the internet with English being the main content. So there's 50 to 60% of the content of the internet is English, but only about 20 to 25% of human beings speak that language. So that's denying a lot of people access to the internet.
You're too fast.
Sorry. There's just a lot to get through, and I've already said this, Kara. I said this earlier about the English. So basically, 60% of the web content is English when only 25% of people speak English. That's the point to get across there. I might just skip through that one and get to the sort of the ways that this is sort of edging into militarism and the overlap of these companies, but also their practices. So they're looking for this perfect surveillance, and they've militarised law enforcement, as we've seen through the treatment of Manning and the potential kind of hounding down of Snowden. And we're using anti-terrorism to justify a lot of things these days, including the persecution of these people. There's a guy called Barrett Brown who's facing sentencing in Texas next month. And what did he do? He pasted a link on the internet. He pasted a link and he faces 10 years jail. There's another man, Jeremy Hammond. He's in jail for 10 years for hacking into a company called Stratfor. Julian Assange, who's a friend of mine, is sitting in an embassy in London because there's a grand jury investigation into him. This is about the militarisation and the criminalisation of activities on the internet. And it's pretty scary. So this corporate control I've gone a little bit through, and the media control is linked. There's a lot of the same companies involved. Cut out some slides
That
on that.
last quote was pretty good.
Yeah, well that's what, yeah, I mean, people who think that Julian is not in danger,
Who's Mike Greenwald?
he's a foreign, he's a State Department person, I understand, but we can look up him. So, but it was published in, no, he's associated with Time magazine, sorry, he's part of Time magazine. So this is pretty scary. So they're using a lot of censorship, and if you look at this, like 97 billion pieces of intelligence have been collected through the PRISM program. On who? On countries that the US doesn't have a whole lot of friendly intentions towards, and others, like Germany, that it supposedly does, but they like to surveil the telephone of Angela Merkel anyway. How is this information being used? How is this potential to control the internet being used? Well, it's strongly connected to the use of drones. That metadata is being used to identify where people are and who they would like to attack. So this is a child who was attacked in Pakistan by a drone, in Yemen, I mean. The drone, there's a huge overlap. They couldn't do what they're doing with drones if they didn't have this control of the internet, if they weren't using data that they've gained from the internet. A lot of these firms, a lot of the fat mags and a lot of the big Silicon Valley folks have been, directly funded by the military. The federal government pumped $35 billion into California between 41 and 45 that were the seeds of this, but they have really bloomed. In the Bay Area alone, I understand $5 billion. Bell Labs was based there, Cisco, Sun. A lot of these companies got a lot of direct research. I could go into some ancient history, but here's something that's a little bit more up to date. You can see here IBM and Oracle and Sun Microsystems and Hewlett Packard. A lot of these folks have been directly funded by the military to provide electronics, to provide training, to provide the infrastructure of the NSA supercomputers, but also the military's computer system as well. So this shows this kind of strange ties. Another way of showing it is the ways in which there's a kind of revolving door between Google and the State Department. It's kind of amazing. Another way of looking at it is the iPhone might have been brought to you by the Department of Defense. Who's got an iPhone in here? Yeah. So the GPS was funded by the military, created by the military, so was the multi-touch system, the microprocessors, and the radio, telephony, cellular comms. So there's a lot of dual use, but there's a lot of sort of direct relationship here between the technology that's being used and who created it. I won't go into that. So this imperialist agenda by these Google folks is incredible. Who's read this book called The New Digital Age? It is a shock. It is so disgusting. It's these guys from Google painting what they think is this wonderful, positive idea of the future, which is a total nightmare for most ordinary human beings, about how sort of every single aspect of our lives is going to be intermediated with some kind of computer or device or piece of technology. But the important thing they say is this: what Lockheed Martin was to the 20th century, technology and the cybersecurity companies will be to the 21st. Yep. So they're very overt here about what they're on about. Which is why I say, let's not use Google, let's use, if you want to do a search, this company here, DuckDuckGo, is an open source, very good way of searching the internet, and the more of us who use it, the better their service will be.
How about Bing?
Bing, I don't know, that's a Microsoft thing. This is open source, these are activists, these are kind of anti-corporate monsters. And the more people who use it, the better it'll get. So it's really worth getting away from this new security digital industrial complex. The ways and the connections between the fat bags and the security complex we've seen from Snowden, but also the use of these companies both in terms of propaganda, but in terms of targeting drones and being support systems for weapons.